All right, it's time for Russia. 4.4, Absolutism in Russia. We have not really, there we go, get rid of the glasses. Kind of seen the reflection. We haven't really talked about Russia much as of this point. There's a reason, because they really haven't been relevant. But as the era of absolutism comes into play, Russia's going to start mattering. And we've got several Putin memes, and here today I'm joined by Dandelion, and this is De'Aaron the Fox, and some random unicorn that Maisie got here recently, so they're going to be our assistants for this podcast. Apologies to Sixth Period for screwing something up here at the beginning. I think you know what that is. Okay, so the menu. Areas of change to Russian society applied by Peter the Great by westernization. So the big thing from this is westernization and that concept. But we're going to start with kind of a background. What is Russia missing? On this map, Russia's everything over here in the screen. What do they not have? They do not have, and this is big to know kind of Russian, like why the Russians do what they do over time. Russia's missing access to a warm water port to be able to create some sort of place that they can trade and move goods from Russian land to Western Europe. So they're missing that. So as time is going to go on, their leaders are going to try to gain access to that warm water. Okay, warm water port, that's what it's all about. So we're going to start here just briefly talking about Ivan the Terrible, because really this guy is like, there's a lot to say. Okay, there he is wearing his best curtain. It's beautiful, isn't it? Ivan the Terrible, when he becomes the leader of what was called Muscovy, a kingdom in what we consider Russia today, based in the city of Moscow, he takes the title Tsar, C-Z-A-R or T-S-A-R. That's a derivative of the word Caesar or king. So he's going to want to be known as the Russian Tsar, and he's going to expand Russian territory to the point where Muscovy becomes basically a collection of these Russian states. Just like, you know, you have the German states. Well, Muscovy, M-U-S-C-O-V-Y, is the largest Russian state. He's going to expand into other Russian states and to increase what will become known as Russia's size. He will reduce the power of the boyars, the nobles. So it's the same trend that we've seen. It's actually, this is happening a little bit earlier than the absolute monarchs in Western Europe, because Western Europe at this point, when Ivan is ruling, they've got the Reformation going on in Western Europe. So he's going to treat these boyars very harshly. And over his last 20 years or so, he's going to earn the moniker Terrible. He's going to earn that nickname. And I'll share with you in class some stories about Ivan Terrible involving violence against puppies and kittens, old ladies, blowing up people. You know, there's a lot of fun stuff there. But in any case, his last 20 years as Tsar was a very rough time in Russia. He kills his son, which is never what you want. Oh, I see the screen. Oh, that's cool. That's awesome. He kills his son over an argument over his daughter-in-law wearing some, revealing clothing, maybe showing some ankle. So that's not great. So that's his heir to the throne. He contracts syphilis before he dies, and he tries the whole mercury thing to try to solve that. Doesn't really work. And then he dies while playing chess. So, you know, like checkmate. Jokes. But anyway, Ivan the Terrible dead. Russia goes through a period called the Time of Troubles, where there's not really any one ruler. For 30 years, you've got violence across main Russian areas until the boyars come together and choose a grandnephew of Ivan named Michael Romanov. And Romanov basically said, listen, I'm going to favor the boyars. I'm going to let you kind of have local control if you support me as Tsar. So they were like, sure. So when we talked about Eastern Europe and that agreement between boyars or nobles and the king, this is kind of what is happening here. So with that, the rights of peasants decline because the nobles have direct control over the lands that the peasants live on, and the king can't intercede on their behalf. And there's Michael Romanov with some fancy shoes. Very nice. That is an amazing outfit. I mean, that is just stellar. Yeah, okay. Anyway, um, oh crap, what was I saying? What did I do? Michael Romanoff. Okay, so anyway, Michael Romanoff, he doesn't really do much. And then a few generations go by, and we're in now to about the time where Louis XIV is king, and we have the emergence of who becomes known as Peter the Great, known as Peter the First. At first, friends, we're going to go outside the room here real quick. Known as Peter the First, but he will take on the moniker of Peter the Great. What else is in here? Oh, Piper. Yes, I understand. Yes, I know. Okay, let's talk about the background of Peter. First of all, he's really tall. He's outside. Can I lay on you as a pillow? Will that work? Great. You're so kind, Piper. Thank you. Yes, I know. Yes. He's really tall. Peter the Great. There's a good story about him surviving a plot by his sister to take the throne. Sorry, I have like 5 chins. And he survives a rebellion from his sister and the Moscow private army, the Moscow Guard, so it shows maybe some military strength and some perseverance from Peter. It proves that he is willing to protect his throne, to protect his ability to rule. And as he matures into his rule, he places a huge focus on the military. He places a huge focus on the development of a Russian navy and a Russian army, and wants to transform Russia into a European country. His goal is to integrate Russia into the European community, in which you see a lot of wealth and a lot of prestige being developed in the mid-1600s, a lot of that having to do with Louis XIV and the things he is doing in France. So Peter, as a young ruler, wants to learn a little bit more about the way Western Europe works. So he goes under disguise as best he can. Many reports had him at about 6'7" to 6'9" in terms of height. But he... Oh, I have fleas. Hey, do you have fleas? I don't think that's enough. She looks offended. Peter, as a czar... Yep, jeez, are you kicking me off? What are you doing? As a czar, goes undercover and goes to Western Europe to discover culture, interactions between the nobles and the monarchy, how the middle class work in Western Europe and their ability to make money and their ability to bring wealth to society. So Peter learns a lot about this adventure. He comes back as czar. Again, like I said, he went in disguise. Comes back as czar and decides that the only way that Russia is going to succeed is getting that warm water port to the western part of Europe. So he targets Sweden here to try to take that land. As you see, Sweden defeats Russia in a very minor war in the mid to late 1600s. So Peter says, again, I have to fully invest my country and try to turn them into a Western European country. So he embarks upon this process of westernization, which this is by far the most important part of the section. He wants to westernize Russia, meaning that turn Russia into socially and culturally a Western European country. So what does that look like? A lot of social changes. He forces the nobles or the boyars to shave their beards, or they get a beard tax. He forces the nobility to change their wardrobe, to dress like Western European nobles. He forces women to change their traditional dress. He installs a Western calendar. He brings printing presses. He brings potatoes. All these things to try to introduce the traditional Russian culture to turn it into a European country. One of my favorite images of all time in AP Euro is Peter the Great here shaving a noble's beard. If the boyars or the nobles say no, like I said, put a little beard tax on, and then, hey, get a little extra money. Again, the purpose of this is to implicate the image and the vision that Russia is a Western European country. creates a focus on iron production, so industry, and also creates a standing army that is modeled after Western European countries like Prussia, France, England, and the like. So again, all these things add to the idea he's trying to create that Western European country. And then he's ready to go back at Sweden. And by 1721, Russia does defeat Sweden in what's called the Great Northern War, and Russia gets their warm water port on the Baltic Sea. The Swedes are sad, but the Russians are glad. And now you notice everything in green is now Russia's. And they add that territory from Sweden, who you would be surprised at this point is an actual continental power. So everything's great. Russia's got their land, and Peter is ready to go to work in building a window to the West, the ability to connect Western Russia to Western Europe. And he orders the construction of a new capital on the Baltic Sea, naming it St. Petersburg. I wonder who named it after. Come on, Peter. Yeah, there she is. So St. Petersburg is going to basically be a copycat to Versailles. It's going to serve much the same purpose. He forces the nobility to move there. He wants peasants to come build the city and gets it. So Peter is, again, he's taking the example from Louis XIV and he's installing it in Russia. Now what's interesting is you can see this image. If you remember back to Michael Romanov's outfit, what Ivan the Terrible was wearing as like a curtain. And in 200 years, look how the Russian nobles, they're in the back, and look how Peter the Great here up front, look at what they're wearing. I mean, you would look at that and say, oh, they are straight out of Western Europe. So it's very much a copycat image of Western European culture. I'm not sure what's happening over there on the beach. That might be Jesus, who knows. Oh, there's Ivan in his dress, and you see the difference. Again, Westernization. Ooh, all right. That's Versailles. And this is the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. Again, Versailles, St. Petersburg. Very similar architecture of the time, Baroque architecture. Trying to show Baroque architecture. Yes, that's basically the same movement. Trying to show grandeur, emotion, not so much emotion, but ornate styles. Try to gain some sort of emotional reaction to show majesty in a very convenient way. So the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. Contrast that to St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow, the traditional Russian architecture with the mushrooms on the top as domes. And again, you see the difference. St. Petersburg, Moscow. And it shows kind of the evolution of Russia's design as we get into the 18th century. That's supposed to be a gift there at the bottom of him on a Ritz cracker, and it's like the best. He just goes rolls around. It's awesome. Peter's also going to establish better, more efficient government. He's going to rule by decree, no legislative body. So you talk about efficiency, whatever he wants, he gets immediately. Landowners, to be able to hold land, you basically are going to have to prove your service to the state. So everyone is in it to help the Russian government, aka Peter, in order to have those privileges. But in return, Peter's going to let those landowners, those boyars, control their serfs. They're going to let them basically control those peasants, so those lower class people, and let them stay on their own property. And Peter's not going to come in and mess with that as long as the landowners serve Peter. Heavy taxation, that's to be expected. You also have this thing called the table of ranks. Basically, Peter says, in my government, we're going to have civil servants. We're going to have servants that have education, and they're going to serve in a way that makes them efficient and effective. And this new government staff, again, him rewarding positions to people for their talents and for their merit, not for who their daddy was. People are going to become loyal to Peter because they are allowed to move up in positions in the government because they got it, right? They're loyal to him, but they're also talented. Peter wants good people around him to make the job get done. Hey, that's it for 4.4. Again, the big idea is Westernization. How does Peter the Great transform Russia from a regional power into a country rather that matters in Western Europe. So that's where we'll stop. We'll come back to Russia plenty more times, but Peter the Great, key figure in transforming Russia from regional power to European power.